Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Pointless Top 10, a show where we make top 10 lists out of pointless things. Why are we flying by his pointless statue in Booty Bay? Because inside pointless things are treasure. Let's begin. 10. Number 10 is some stuff that I found out in the water near the fatigue areas of the Dragon Isles. And I actually thought I was discovering some crazy stuff because there's this big shipwreck, which you can see right there. And then nearby, there's a skeleton that's by some planks. So I was like, oh, this guy must have been by the ship. And then there's this little lantern thing that's got some light beaming out of it. So I was like, yo, that's pretty cool. And then right near that, you see the skeleton of a fish that has a dagger or a sword stabbed into its head. So I was like, yo, this guy must have put up a fight and then he stabbed this fish and then he couldn't swim up and he just died. And then a little near there, there's actually another big fish skeleton, and this one has a skeleton of a person inside that fish skeleton. So there's a lot of skeletons down here, which makes sense. I mean, we're way under the sea. But what made me put this at number 10 after finding all this cool stuff is a lot of this is just reused assets from Battle for Azeroth. And when I was swimming around BFA, I found these lanterns, I found these skeletons like all over the place. And I was like, dude, I thought I stumbled across some like crazy story that got put there, but really, it was just some reused assets. I think I even found a couple more of these in the Dragon Isles, but I think I found the coolest set of skeletons that tell the most cohesive stories, so that's why it's number 10. 9. Number 9 are some things I found in southwest Azuna out in the Great Sea. And the first thing is the sword in the stone, and it's literally a sword in the stone, which I imagine is a reference to the Excalibur sword from King Arthur. I couldn't think of King Arthur for a bit. And it appears there's some skeletons with spears in them. So either there must have been a battle around here, maybe to get the sword, or maybe they tried to get the sword and they got hit before they could get it. Who knows? But I do know that this was pretty cool to find because I never knew this was here. And then not too far away from this, there are these giant fish skeleton bones. At least I think it's a fish. Maybe it's a whale. Whatever it is something massive. Oh, like look at the rib cage on this thing. It almost looks like a dome. Like this is a house people could live in. And it's just this giant rib cage. And I saw this and I was like, dude, this is so cool. Like I would love a building like this. Like maybe if the Tuskarr made a building out of this somehow, they like got this out of the ground and then did that. I don't know. I'm just theorizing and throwing stuff together. And then finally, right near this big whale skeleton is this pearl. And it's just this pearl in this area and it's just chilling there. I don't know if it has any meaning. I don't think it has any quest or purpose, or I don't think anything happens in this area. I think it's just a cool little area with a pearl and some clams. It almost looks like a chair actually, but that's why all these things in southwest Azuna are number 9. 8. Number 8 is in the water below the bridge that leads from the Arathi Highlands into the wetlands. And in the water below the bridge, there appears to be a dwarf who has been crushed by the bridge or fallen off or something has happened to him. And I was really curious about who this dwarf was. And so after researching it, I found out that his name is Sully Baloo. And according to Wowpedia, Sully Baloo is a dwarven soldier with much faith in his mission stationed in Dunmodir. He and his unit were dispatched to watch over the Thandal Span. During the Dark Iron Clan assault, Sully died, most likely due to falling off the bridge. His body can now be found in the water beneath the span next to a letter for his wife in case of his death. After the letter is delivered, his wife Sarah Baloo writes a plea to King Magni Bronzebeard, who orders Grand Mason Marbleston to build a granite memorial for Sully. And this is actually a real-life reference to a letter written by Union Major Sullivan Baloo to his wife Sarah shortly after the first Battle of Bull Run in July of 1861. So there you go. It turns out when you go underwater and swim around, you never know what you're gonna find, and that's why Sully Baloo is number 8. 7. Number 7 is the Old God treasure that you can find in Tiragard Sound or in Dragon Isles somewhere. I actually couldn't find it in Dragon Isles, but I did find it in Tiragard, and I know that because when I researched everything, there were people making threads being like, dude, are there old gods in the Dragon Isles? Are they like under the sea? But then people were like, no, this is like reused assets from Battle for Azeroth. So it probably is more tied into N'Zoth since that was all in Battle for Azeroth. But it also kind of gives me the Darkmoon Faire vibe. So this could almost be tied into the Darkmoon Faire in some weird way as well, especially because a lot of that was tied into like, we don't know where the Darkmoon Faire Island actually is. So this could be a reference to that. Like, who knows? There's so many theories about this treasure. But one thing's for sure, and that's nobody has any idea of what it actually is, except the fact that it's an old god eyeball, potentially, and it's just around a bunch of treasure. However, this might be the perfect opportunity to say inside pointless things are treasure, but we don't actually know if this is pointless or not. So that's why I couldn't put it higher up on the list, and it's reused assets. So that's why It's number 7. 6. Number 6 is some cool stuff that I found northeast of High Mountain and Stormheim out in the Great Sea. And I'm kind of cheating here because I'm like putting multiple things at every spot, but there was so much cool stuff that I found underwater that I was like, I got to include a lot of these. So I just started grouping things that were pretty close together in their own category. So there's actually a ton more. I can make a whole nother video on this, but for now, here's what appears to be a Vrykul ship being eaten by this giant dragon skeleton thing. I think it's a dragon. It kind of looks like it, and it clearly took a giant bite out of this ship, and then I guess they just both crashed into the water or something, and they're all dead. But that was really cool to find underwater. And then over here, we have this upside down boat with these nets kind of holding it up, and these crabs are just running around. And occasionally the crabs will be like, blue, 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 and like a bunch of sand and dust like flies up. So like, I don't know what they were doing. It looks like they were playing some sort of sport, but I don't know what crabs do, so they're having fun, I guess. And then finally, we have the corrupted groupers, which are swimming around this crashed, sunken, forsaken ship, and there's a bunch of these toxic barrels just sitting down there, which appears to be the reason why these groupers are corrupted. And again, there's no quest for these guys. There's really nothing that talks about them at all. This is just some random thing out in the ocean, which is pretty pointless. So I love that, and that's why they're number 6. 5. Number 5 is the Bubble Bath, and the Bubble Bath is located beneath the Hissing Grotto in the northwestern Waking Shores. And from what I researched, this area is actually used for a couple of things, one of which is the Hidden Dragon Pet Quest, and then the other one is the Otto the Mount Quest. But I mainly picked this area because I love how goofy it is. They have a dancing pad on the ground. There's just a bunch of people walking around like they're above ground. And I also wanted to give a shout out to all the other underwater bars and inns located throughout Azeroth, because there's a lot of them. And I've even mentioned some of them in Pointless Top 10 Taverns, which you could go watch after this if you want, but I wanted to give a shout out to all those because I do think it's really cool that they have a bunch of these underwater taverns and inns located all over in Battle for Azeroth and Dragon Isles. And so that's why the Bubble Bath and all of the other taverns underwater are number 5. 4. Number 4 is this giant elf statue located in the ruins southeast of Suramar out in the Great Sea. And I'm not sure who this elf is. I guess it could be Elune. Maybe it could be some other famous elf. I would imagine you'd have to be pretty famous in order to get a statue built out of yourself. And the statue actually reminded me of the front of the ship, those things on the front. That's the figurehead, right? It reminded me of a figurehead on the front of a ship. And although this isn't a ship, I guess maybe they modeled it after the figurehead of a ship, I guess. Whatever it is, I think it is pretty cool. And then all around her, there's elf ruins, there's some fish bones, there's a bunch of trees and kelp and stuff. And if you really enjoy exploring underwater, I would say this is an area you should start with because there is so much stuff here. There's way more ruins than this. I think Legion had like the most stuff underwater out of anything I looked through. So if you really want to go exploring underwater, go look at Legion because it's got an insane amount of unique things. But anyway, that's why the underwater Suramar ruins and elf statue are number 4. 3. For number 3, we head out to Draenor, where we have a little thing and a big thing, quite literally. So we start with Ashran, and if you go into the fatigued waters of Ashran, you will find this gnome skeleton, and he's got a jug of something, and then some sort of cage to catch something. Like, I don't know what that cage is for, but it's a gnome skeleton out in the waters. I don't know what he was doing. Maybe he was collecting mushrooms. Maybe he was trying to do something. Whatever he was doing, it did not end well. And the other one is out in the eastern waters of Gorgrond, and there is this big ogre cyclops statue with a bunch of mushrooms growing out of it. And it's just really cool. I don't know how it got there either, but it's randomly out there. There's actually a treasure chest with like an anchor and a skeleton nearby, so maybe they were trying to get out there too. I don't know what they were doing, but I just think this was really cool to find out in the water. In fact, scouting Draenor underwater was pretty easy. For some reason, like swimming through the Draenor water was a lot clearer than swimming through a lot of the other places. So it's actually easier to find stuff underwater in Draenor, but I don't know why. It's just the way the graphic settings are or something. But either way, that's why the gnome skeleton and the ogre cyclops statue head are number 3. 2. Number 2 is located in the far northeastern part of Stormheim, and I mean way northeast, and it is this weird spot where the shark is just chilling under this big rib cage, and there's some pirate ship stuff around here, and then there's a bunch of dead murlocs. In fact, these are called lifeless murlocs. And when I looked it up on Wowhead, there were only 2 comments, and they were just like, yeah, I mean, these are just lifeless murlocs in this really weird area, and there's really nothing, relevant about this place. It's just they're just here. And so if I had to make some sort of assumption, I would say the shark probably did it, right? I think the shark probably killed all of them. I don't know if they were on the boat. I don't think Murlocs know how to sail a boat, so I don't think they crashed it here. Maybe they came here after somebody else shipwrecked and they were trying to loot it, and then the shark came over and was like, yo, I'm gonna kill all these Murlocs, and then it did. I have no idea. It's such an odd thing to find out in the water in the middle of nowhere, and that's why it was perfect for number 2. And number 1 is the Writhing Leviathan located at Hayman's Hideaway in Vol'dun. And I think a lot of people already know about this one, but I just think it's really cool. So the Writhing Leviathan is this big kraken, and then there's this horn, and you can blow the horn, and he's just like, and he starts, you know, doing a little jig, I guess. He's just like, he's dancing around. And then on top of that, there's this little boathouse area, and then there's a bunch of jellyfish just kind of floating all around. It's a really cool area. And the reason I wanted to put it at number 1 is it just has this cool, creepy vibe to it, right? Because everybody's like, oh, there might be monsters down in the seas below. And so this actually kind of feeds into that, because you're like, oh, what's this horn? And you look down and you just see that and you're like, but then, you know, he's just kind of doing his own thing. He's dancing around, having a good time. The jellyfish are there to watch him, or maybe they're his friends. So to me, this is actually a really fun place, but I'm sure for other people, they are freaked out and scared and like, I'm never coming back here. And that's fine too. And that's why the Writhing Leviathan is number 1. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this episode of Pointless Top 10. If you want more Top 10s, we had things you never noticed in WoW. That kind of ties into this if you want to find out some weird, mysterious stuff, or you go check out Taverns. I mentioned that earlier in the video as well. Also, consider supporting the channel over on patreon.com/wowcrendor or by becoming a channel member. Okay? Okay. See ya.